Welcome to the Lindsay and Tony podcast, where we talk about spirituality, business, and life experiences.
In this podcast, we're bringing our private conversations to you.
We believe that it's through discussion, action, and reflection that true change occurs.
Hi everybody, welcome to episode 101, the 3 ways to maximize this podcast and create exponential results. Because that's the whole point why we created this podcast in the first place, is to help you create exponential results in every area of your life. And in this podcast episode, we're gonna give you tips on how you could actually maximize the information you're learning so that way you actually take action and create the results that you desire. I hope everybody enjoys the show. Hi everybody, welcome to this week's podcast episode. Obviously, Lindsay's not with me right now. She is in the Northeast and Boston and New Hampshire doing events. So this week, what I'm gonna share with you is the 3 ways that you can maximize this podcast and create exponential results in your life. And I'm actually gonna share my number 1 strategy that I use to learn and process new information. That way I could actually apply it into my life. And this is coming from somebody who is an education major. I was a teacher in the public schools for several years. And I really appreciate education. And I really think deeply about ways that people can learn, reflect, and actually take the information and create results. So I will be sharing that towards the end of this episode. So make sure you watch the entire episode here. So let's think about this. So ways to maximize this podcast. What I'm really talking about is ways to maximize any information that you learn. So you all are learning information every single day. And in this episode, you're gonna learn different tips on how you could fully take in that information. So that way you're not just thinking about it, and that way you're not just romanticizing about it and having deep conversations without actually applying the information. So let's go to tip number 1. So as you watch each of the first 100 podcast episodes, tip number 1 would be to listen for insight. So as you're listening to our podcast episode, instead of listening to, thinking about, do I agree with that? Or I disagree with that, that makes sense, that doesn't, and getting too much in our analytical mind, let's listen for insight in the same way that we listen to a beautiful piece of music. In the same way that if we're at a concert, we're just absorbing it. We're taking in all of the music without, maybe we might judge music and all that, but if you're at a concert or you're listening to music that you love, you're just taking it in. So look at this podcast and look at any new information that you learn, whether you're reading it or you're listening to a video or it's a course or you're in a seminar and a live event, whatever it is, listen to it for insight, because you are going to see that information and you're going to hear it in a different way than anybody else is going to receive that information. The way that our brains work, we see what we need to see in that moment. So take what you need to take in that moment. Tune into your intuition and listen to what it is saying to you as you're listening to the information, as you're learning the new information. So listen for insight rather than listen to see if someone's right or wrong or if you agree with it, because that's all good and everything. But the way that I see it is one insight will shift your entire world. So if you're listening to or you're learning new information and you're overanalyzing it, thinking, do I agree, I disagree, and all of these different things that happen when we learn new information, sometimes it's easy to miss that one insight that we need in that moment to actually take us to the next level in our life. So listen for insight is number 1. Number 2 is create one action step from each podcast episode. If you have 2 action steps, that's okay. But make it 1 or 2 action steps that you take from each podcast episode that you could apply into your life, whatever subject that is. One action step. And I say one action step because if we try to create 3 new action steps or 5 new action steps or 6 new action steps, it becomes overwhelming and we actually don't even end up taking one step. What I found was when I figure out one action step to take from the book that I'm reading that day, from the information that I'm learning that week, or from the course that I'm taking that month, I figure out one action step that I could apply into my life on a daily basis. I found that that's how I create exponential results. It's not by trying to figure out everything all at once. It's not by thinking you have to solve every problem in your life in this moment. No, it's by slowing down, letting the insights hit, letting your intuition tell you, yes, this is the action step to take next. This is the position to go. Because if you think about it, that's how everything's created. Everything is created one step at a time. It's not created by doing 50,000 steps in one day or 1,000,000 steps in one year. It's one step at a time. And yes, eventually you get up to 50,000 steps and 1,000,000 steps and whatever you're doing. But it's one step at a time. How do you get up Mount Everest? I don't know. I've never done it, but I imagine it's one step at a time. So if we overwhelm ourselves and we think that we have to climb this huge mountain right away, you never end up taking any action. Trust me, I've seen it over and over with my students in the public schools, with my clients that I have now. If we try to do too many actions at once, we end up taking no action at all. So with each podcast episode, think of one action step that you can take, that you could apply specifically with whatever that subject matter is, that concept is in that podcast episode. One action step that you can take and apply on a daily basis. Make it practical. Okay? So the number 3 way on how to maximize this podcast and create exponential results in your life, because that's what this podcast is for. That's the whole reason why we created this in the first place, is to help you create exponential results in your life. So the third tip is to engage your body in the process. Whatever you have to do to get your body engaged as you're learning new information, do that. Why? Because your body is your unconscious mind. Another way to look at it, your body is your mind. Your mind is your body. Everything's connected. So when you're learning, obviously, if you think about it, the more engaged that you get your entire being into the process, you start to imprint this information within your body, within every cell of your body. And you start to embody this information rather than just have it bounce around in the analytical brain to where you're, like I was talking about at the beginning of this, that was right, that was wrong, I agree with this, I agree with that. You're just taking in this energy and you're embodying it. You know, that's the secret that I used to help me get mostly straight A's my last 3 years of college. I had 2 B pluses. I would embody the information. And this is my tip. This is my secret as an educator, as somebody who went to school, paid thousands and thousands of dollars to get an education degree. And then I have thousands of hours in teaching students and teaching clients and figuring out ways to learn and how people learn best. The number one thing that I found is for me to move as I'm learning, to either ride my bike, to walk, to skip, to move my body. Even when I talk, as you can see now, it's hard for me to talk without moving my body. That's what helped me go from somebody who was in high school to where I had like a 2.0 GPA, I could hardly even pay attention in class, to figuring out how I learn best and getting pretty much straight A's except for 2 B pluses my last 3 years of college. I wish I could just say, yeah, I got straight A's, but I can't lie to you. 2 B pluses. I was like a percentage away on each class. It was the same teacher. She didn't like giving A's. I'm not going to make excuses though. But the thing is, what you do, engage your body. As you're listening to this podcast, as you're listening to new information and you're learning, because we're all professionals here. We all have to learn something every single day if we want to commit and go pro in what we're doing. make sure you're engaging your body. Another tip for that, you could just write. You could take notes as you're listening. So if you're listening to this podcast episode and you're not driving in a car or anything like that, go ahead and take notes. Or if you're watching it, go ahead and take notes, because there's so many studies to where when you take notes and you write something down, you engage both sides of the brain. So you're listening, you're observing, you're writing it down, you start to engage every part of the brain. And obviously, when you do that, you start to engage every part in the learning process, and you're going to learn the information a lot more powerfully than you would if you didn't do that. Because the thing is, a lot of the information that we learn, whether we're reading a book or listening to a video or watching a video, a lot of it just goes in one ear and out the other, because we're processing 80,000 thoughts every single day. 80,000. They say 60 to 80,000 thoughts every single day are bouncing around in our head over and over and over again. And you know the problem with that is most of those thoughts are the same thoughts every single day, even if we're learning new information, because we are creatures of habit. So whatever we could do to impact that unconscious mind so we could create a new 60,000 to 80,000 thoughts, or at least 10,000 new ones, 20,000 new ones per day, per week, per month, so we could live a new reality. Because as all you know on this podcast, that listen to this podcast, you know that your thoughts create your reality. Whatever you focus on, that's where you go. So if you want to start thinking new thoughts, seeing in new ways, we have to impact our unconscious mind. And I found the best way to do that is to engage your body in the entire process of your learning process and with everything that you do. Because when you shift your body and you shift the way that energy is working, you start to shift your brain, your mind, your spirit, every part of you. It all goes hand in hand. So use every part of you in this learning process. So I'm excited to share all this information with you. This is one of my passions here, teaching people how to learn and get results. It's the whole reason why I even went into education industry in the first place and spent all this money to get a degree and all this time and energy, is because I believe in education and I believe in learning, and I believe that when we have perfect practice, that's when we start to create exponential results. And I hope that this episode helped you to lean into that perfect practice a little bit more so that way you could actually take action and get the exponential results that you're craving.
We hope you enjoyed this episode as much as we did. If you liked it, leave a 5-star review on iTunes, and remember, subscribe to our YouTube channel too.
If you can think of anyone else that would love this episode, share it with them right now on social media or email. And remember, getting results is a process of learning, applying, and reflecting. Stay consistent and continue to grow every day.